Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got a few knives here on the table. These are Bulldog Brand knives. Pretty nice knives. Was looking on eBay, saw a couple of these on here, and I've got a few, so I thought I'd group them all together and talk about Bulldog Brand. What's the deal on these? When did they come about? Give you a little bit of history and a little bit of collecting information on them, so you can make an informed purchase if you happen to see one of these on eBay or anywhere else. So hope you join me in the video. All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. Yeah, so I was looking on eBay and I came across one of these knives, and then I took a look at some, and so I thought I'd go over the ones that I have and the what's so special about these knives, and maybe give you a little bit of history on them. So let's get into that. So in the late 70s, Charles Dorton, Dorton, decided to produce these knives and market them. And it was kind of, there was a lot of movement. There were different people doing this kind of thing, trying to get back to the old traditional style knives. And reason is the quality on these knives were going down, and so they felt the need to get back to the basics of what these traditional folders used to be. And they were pretty mundane. So this is a little case. It has a little bit of color to it, maybe a whiskey color. I'm not really sure what case called this, but that's pretty much what you could get in the 70s. And here's a Schrade, and they had moved to Delrin. You could still get bone, like Case did produce some bone knives in the 70s, more in the 80s, and Schrade did a few in the 80s, but not any. There were like limited editions, and so you could see the difference in these knives, compared to what was available in that time frame in the 70s and 80s. So they were just trying to produce knives that pre-1940 knife that had all kinds of different features, all kinds of different shields. They were etched, and they were trying to bring that back. And so that was kind of where Dorton was coming from when he started to produce these knives. So he originally tried to market these knives in the United States and was not able to get a knife company that was willing to produce them. So he went overseas and settled on Germany, and these knives were produced in the Olbert's plant. So Olbert's was subsequently has been recognized as one of the finer knife producers. So Olbert's, for instance, the same plant that produced these knives produced I-brand knives, pre-70 I-brand knives, and among others. And so, he did high quality work. And if you look at these knives, they are really good quality as you look down them. And a lot of speciality to these knives, but they weren't perfect. You can see some Gurin there on the top squares. They're not like custom knives. This one looks pretty good. Looks a little off here. But overall, these were really good knives, and they look spectacular. They brought back these different um, shield styles that had been missing in the celluloid, and that's one reason I bought these. So you'll notice all of these are celluloid, and when I picked these knives up, uh, a lot of the uh, celluloid that you get from in pre 1940 knives, they're worn, they're worn down, they're dirty, they look pretty good. But I was wondering, what did that celluloid look like when it was brand new? It must have been spectacular. And you can see in these knives um, that it is. Now, this is not the same celluloid as the 1940s knives. So this is a celluloid actate. It's a different chemical structure than the pre 1940 celluloid, more stable. But there have been instances where this has broken down. This handle materials, the celluloid actate has broken down on people, and so if you're buying them, that's one thing you have to bear in mind, that it is possible. I've had these a long time, 4 or 5 years, and I've not had any problems with them whatsoever. And I mean, they date back to the 80s, so they're already 34 years old. They're doing just fine. And so that's the reason I picked these up. Now, in this series of knives, you can find them in stack, you can find them in bone, you can find them in wood, and so they cover all the different scale materials. Predominantly I picked up on the celluloid ones because that's what I was looking for, but you can find them in whatever handle material you want. Mother of pearl, they just ran the full gamut. And the special thing about these is the idea was to produce a collector knife. So these knives were produced for knife collectors specifically, not so much the user, even though you can use these knives and people have used them. But because of that, the initial knives were limited in their production runs. And so initially they tried to keep the runs around 300. So you might have one knife of 300. Some of them went up to 600. And so if you produced a knife like this, they would only produce, 300 or 400 of these knives. And that added to the speciality of them. But a lot of different patterns, they tried to produce. This is only scratching the surface here. A lot of different patterns, a lot of different combinations that they put on the knives, all for the collector market. Okay, actually remembered I have another one. This is in bone. I forgot all about this. I keep my celluloid separate from my bone so that it was in a separate area. And pretty nice little trapper here. Standard size trapper. Here's a Robeson trapper. Actually a little smaller, isn't it? Yeah, this is only 3 7/8, so it's not a standard size trapper. This would be a light trapper in that range. Beautiful bone on it though, and very nicely done. If you open this up, very smooth action. Nice little click there. Good, perfect transitions, really. Just, that's the thing about these very well-made knives. You can see the grind there. Back in the day, they put little tiny grinds on these, and that's all you need, and that makes them sharper, and it makes the blade last longer. So today they've gotten lazy, and they make these grinds pretty big. There's your spade blade. You can see the trademark. These blades were marked on every blade. And this trademark changed some. So we're going to go through that um, in this segment right here. So you're basically talking about 5 generations of knives with the Bulldog pattern. And so the first generation was the knives produced by Charles Dorton. Those knives produced between 1980 and 1986. Some of them are marked 87. So let's just say 1980 to 1987. And all of these knives are marked with the date on them. I'm not really sure where it is here. Let me see. Not there. We'll find it. It's around here somewhere. See that they're marked Bulldog Brand, Hammerford, Solingen, Germany. And somewhere on here is the date. There it is. So this one is marked 1985 English steel. They did this English steel thing in 86 also. So this is an original produced by Charles Dorton. These would go for more because they're the original, and you understand by what I mean by original as we go through this. And so all these knives are dated, and you're going to see dates up to 1987 on these knives. All the blades are marked on these models, and all the tang stamps will show this hammer forged Bulldog Brand, hammer forged, Solingen, Germany, like that. In 1986, Dorton was approached by Winchester. They wanted him to make their knives, and so that's who the Winchester models were made for. Charles Dorton started Bluegrass Cutlery, and that's who produced the Winchester model knives. So at that point, he stops producing these knives. So no knives are produced between 87 and 90. Then in 1990, James Parker becomes aware of these knives and goes to the plant, the old Burt's plant, and they have all these old parts from knives they didn't put together when everything stopped. So Jim Parker brings those back into the United States and he puts them together. And so that's a second generation knife right there. These are knives that were put together in the United States on old parts, and so some of these knives are going to have mismatched parts on them. Some of them will have tang stamps that show like 1985 or 86, but the knife wasn't really produced in Solingen. And then some of those knives will not be marked on every blade, and so that's one way that you can tell whether it's a first generation knife or not. And so I think this is a first generation knife here, one that was just put together by parts in the United States by James Parker. I think this possibly could be a first generation knife right here. So you see the hammer forge, and they changed the stamping to surgical instrument. So some of the knives in that time frame, early time frame, 90 to like 93, have a surgical instrument on it, and the Solingen and Germany are together. You remember on the other knife they were separate, one above the other. And this knife's just fine, by the way. I already went through this knife and showed you. But these knives have no etching on them. See it right there. And so I think both of these are probably first generation. The second generation knives are in 93. Parker gained control of the trademark. So he bought the trademark from Charles Dorton. At that time, you'll recall, James Parker is broke. So who really bought the trademark was his wife, Billy Parker, and so she technically owned the company, but obviously it was Parker. So from 1993 to 2000, James Parker produced these knives. The third generations are 1993 to 1995, and those knives have a fighting bulldog here, just like the original ones. And some of them are dated and some of them aren't. You see right here, this is 1993, Hammer Forge, Solingen, Germany. And so it's not over and under there. And the fighting bulldog is really how you would identify these knives. And the mark, this tang stamp mark right here. So in 95, remember there was a big ruckus about fighting dogs and animal cruelty and all of that. So in sensitivity to that, they stopped the fighting dog trademark, and in 95 they went to a standing pit bull trademark. And you see that right there. So this is a 1998. So this is a fourth generation. These were made between 1996 and up to 2000. And they had a single bulldog. They featured etchings on these knives. And here is the tang stamp. So you had a Hammer, Bulldog Brand, Hammer Forge, Solingen, Germany. This is a really nice knife. Really good action. It's a 4-blade canoe. So every blade is marked. Really pretty. Look at that. Beautiful celluloid on there. Here's the back. Really, really nice knives. So I don't have an example of the 5th generation, which would be from 2000 to 2007. The 5th generation knives will have 2 bulldogs, just the base profile of 2 bulldogs on the tang stamp. Those are from 2000 up to 2007. James Parker passed away in 2007, and the knives stopped being produced. Now, there is a 6th generation. I don't know anything about it. These knives were produced by GEC in limited numbers, obviously, and I don't know a whole lot about that production run that GEC did on these knives. I don't know whether GEC actually contracted use the trademark and paid for it, or whether it was for somebody affiliated with the Parkers or Smoky Mountain Knife Works. I don't know. I don't know any of that information. I do know some GEC knives, Bulldog knives, were made. You have to be really careful, because you can find these Bulldog knives and they're made in China. So today I think probably Frost has the trademark now, and the Bulldog brand knives that you get now are made in China. You have to be really careful with that, because these knives are worth a lot more than the knives made in China, obviously. If it has China on the blade, and a lot of you guys could just look at the knives and tell that they're made in China. I know I can. And you have to, you don't want to be paying $150 for a knife made in China. They're just not worth it. So that's the story on these knives. Incredible story, fantastic knives. I've done individual videos on these knives here and always told people I wouldn't pay more than $100 for them. So when I was on eBay, there are some available for less than $100. Most of them were way up there. So $150, $250, $350. I would not pay $350 for this knife. Now that's just me. Okay, so these aren't handmade knives. They're just factory produced knives. They're German produced knives, so they're not the finest quality knives that you're going to find. And they have a lot of the similar problems that knives in the 80s had. They just look really good. I think overall they're better made than a factory produced knife in the United States at that time. But yeah, and you could say, well, it's inflation, you're just going to pay more. Well, inflation really only affects a product that's being produced now. So, if you have 20% inflation, maybe 2-3 years ago, you buy a case knife for $40 or $50, and today it might be, $70 or $80. That's inflation, okay? Selling one of these knives, which these people are just picking up at um, estate sales, pawn shops, yard sales, things like that, you're ripping people off paying $350 for this knife right here. So, for instance, I would rather pay $200 for a GEC than to pay $350 for one of these knives, or even $200 for one of these knives. I just don't think they're worth it. So I might go to $150 for the right knife, but they didn't sell for that much money in the 80s, and they were mass produced, especially after the originals, after 86. These knives were just produced in large quantity by Parker. So it's not like they're scarce either. Just going on eBay, you can tell. I mean, they're just there's a lot of listings. Okay, so it's no problem finding these knives. None of these knives I paid $100 for. They were all under $100. So I would just, second kind of cool. You want what you want, but I just don't think these knives are worth $350, and I think people are ripping you off who are trying to get that kind of money. That's basically what it boils down to. People are just trying to rip people off. When I first started doing videos on this, I called these sleeper knives. And so a sleeper knife is a really well-made knife that goes for a really reasonable price. And so that caught on. More and more people realized these are nice knives and started buying them. And so the prices started going up. And now people are just asking outrageous prices for them. And personally, I'd just rather not have them for that kind of money. I just don't think it's worth it. And so that's the deal on these knives. That's my opinion on it. For what it's worth, it's only my opinion. You may have a different opinion. That's fine. You may think they're the greatest knives in the world and worth $500. That's okay. I don't hate you for that. And that's just all part of what makes the world go round. Different opinions. Hey, thanks for your patronage, for checking out the channel, for all the support that you do. And remember, we got that live show going tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, with JC Mountain Ajar. Can't wait to see you there.